Good day, everybody. Welcome. Sorry for the delay, some tech issues, but we are getting started. So this is episode 377, and tonight we are covering the continuation of the theme on Modern Arnis episodes. And tonight we're going to be focused on the future of Modern Arnis. So we have three guests: Datu Tim Hartman. We have Chris Chiu, who's been on before with his father, and Brom Frank. And we have a new guest who is Noah King, and actually our youngest guest to date. So without further ado, I'll be bringing these folks up. If you are watching, please tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. And if you have questions, please put them in the comments.
There we go.
All right. I don't know. It must have been just some dumb glitch, but hey.
The 12 times the charm.
Yeah. So, you guys, it's definitely showing up. Share away to whatever walls
already on
have you. So, But again, I want to thank you guys for coming on. And so, like we started before I realized it wasn't going live. Datu is going to kind of make a opening statement, which he will touch upon further into the episode.
Right. Okay, so we are talking about the future of modern Arnis, and I don't want to just like blindside people like I was this weekend, which we're going to talk about. I want to mention it, then approach this later in the conversation. So, Professor had passed away, and there was a will in place. Unfortunately, it was never executed. And that's neither here nor there. But afterwards, we all went in our own directions. And fortunately, there was enough of us that kept the art going. But it took a huge hit because at the time of his passing, there was only one dedicated Modern Arnis Academy. And that was mine. Everyone else were, art within your art, which is fine. But, when you look at other arts that the founder passed away, the ones that thrived are the ones that had schools dedicated to the craft. So the question is, if we're talking about the future, hey, calm down. I've got my other co-star. Get over here. Brenna, come here.
Oh, sorry. Bring him in. Yeah.
So
we're pet friendly.
The question is, what happens? What do we have in place for the leaders? Now, this past... Okay. Did you hear him?
It's okay.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
He wants to be part of the show.
Unfortunately, there's two of them here. Brennan, come here. All right, so that'll make it easier. Now he can come in here and can be part of the show. Okay, here we go. So the thing here is this. What happens for the future of the art when the top guy in the art is no longer, or the top guy in the organization is no longer there? So days after Remy passed away, I was rear-ended and in our 65 Mustang, and if anyone had been in the back seat, they would have died. I had a lawsuit to deal with for medical issues and all this other stuff. I wasn't at fault. This past weekend, I was driving with my wife. It was her birthday, and a guy ran through a red light, T-boned me, totaled the car, and had I not seen it coming, there's a good chance that I could have been gravely injured or possibly killed the way it happened. My Balintawak instructor had a Ted Buat had a similar situation where he was T-boned, the car rolled, broke a knee, and stuff of that nature. So if we're talking about the future of the art, what do we have in place if something happens to the leaders of the organization or the art? Because what happens when the top person is no longer here? Now, it's not fair to throw that at you and say, answer me right this moment. I want you to think about that because we do need to address this. What safeguards? And I've already, fortunately, if you're at the 65th anniversary or watch the video of the Modern 65th anniversary camp, I actually put in three people: Punang Gurus, Ty Botting, Chad Doolin, and Craig Mason. I promoted them to 9th degree black belts to not be my successors, but to groom the successors, the next generation. But what are we doing about that? Has this been set up? Has anyone even thought about that? And we can talk about that later in the conversation because that's a big thing to drop on someone and just say, all right, lightning round, give me an answer.
Hey, welcome to the show. So here's your first question.
So, we're safe. Unfortunately, the brand new car that's we've owned for 1 month is now totaled. So that sucks, and we're dealing with it right now, trying to get the insurance company to do its thing. By the way, organized crime, it's not the mob.
Oh, it's insurance companies. I always said that. It's not the five families. It's the freaking
families want in. They're like, no,
yeah.
You can't sit at the big. You go sit at the children's table. This is the adults table. But I want you to think about that. And the question is, what do you have in place? What do you? I'm assuming that everyone here is concerned about the future. That are wanting to go beyond their generation. We know that some people don't care. They just do fun activity. But what do we do? What do we have in place to go forward? So, you must be laughing at comments here. So I'm going to let you say some things.
No. I'm just glad. Well, first, I just want to say I'm glad that you and your wife are okay. I mean, obviously, cars can be totaled, redone, repaired, but I'm just glad that you were okay. Glenn's a funny guy, man.
I have it with me if you want to see it.
No.
Oh my gosh.
Nose King Blade.
Living art. Absolutely. And we got Craig here. All right, folks. Thank you for those who are jumping in. We got John Quest here. We got Glenn, as we know. We got Holden King. I'm assuming that's a relative of yours. We got Greg Mason, Ryan Thomas. Okay. Chris Nolly. Hey, Chris. Jackie. Hey, Jackie. Brian, Andres, all right, good folks. All right, so folks, you heard it. If you got questions, start sending them in. But we're gonna jump in. We got 22 folks watching already, so let's kick it off. All right, let's just get a quick background for those who are watching who may not know or have forgotten. So, Datu, quick background, martial art background.
Okay, so I started officially legitimate training in 1985, and the first art I trained was Modern Arnis. I started in a dedicated Modern Arnis Academy, the Filipino Karate Academy, and then I eventually started doing my own thing. The school closed down. I continued on. 91 to 90, somewhere around 91, 93, I became the K&M director of the International Modern Arnis Federation. I used to manage the content, seminars and stuff online for Professor through that website, which was WM Arnis, which is now the home of our organizational site. I teach 20 to 30 seminars a year, 28 states, 17 countries, adding 3 this year with Brazil, Mexico, and Trinidad, most likely.
Awesome.
And I still have a dedicated full-time monitor. I actually spent the whole day, 12 hours there today, working on improving the school and things for the future of what we do. And this is what I do as my profession. Sort of like the Spartans, when they ask the Merrymen, what do you do? Well, we're farmers. Spartans, what do we do? War. This is what I do. And then I tell a lot of jokes with Dean online.
Yes. And all right, Sir Young Maestro, Chris Chiu. Let's hear it.
Background on me, born and raised in martial arts. My dad says he started teaching me when I was 2 years old. I obviously don't remember anything about that time, but I'll take his word for it. Unofficial first art was Modern Arnis. My empty hand drills were not patty cake. They were Sinawali empty hand drills. First official art was Taekwondo. My dad moved up north, so I wanted to do martial arts, and there was no Filipino schools in the area. So my mother gave me a choice, or she had 2 options: a very traditional Kung Fu school, very famous Kung Fu school here in Florida, and a Taekwondo academy. And I somehow got the Taekwondo academy. Was there for a number of years, got my black belt, became an instructor, was there till I got my 3rd degree black belt, left that one. I was about 10 years in there, and then jumped head first into Modern Arnis, ranked in, I'm a 2nd degree black belt, I believe in that. I forget the rank because I think Filipino ranks are always interesting because everyone has different systems of doing it. Ranked in Serrado Eskrima under Orlando Eskrima Club. Ranked in FCS Cali under 200 Radian Aldo. Ranked in Small Circle Jiu-Jitsu under Professor Leon J. If I'm forgetting anything, I apologize. My thing is I go out and train with everybody. I love doing it. I think that's the true aspect of what we're supposed to do in FMA. We're supposed to train. We're supposed to learn. We're supposed to have community. So anyone wants to train, I'll come train with them and learn from them, and hopefully I can share some stuff with them too. I've been doing this my entire life, so I love doing it too. I just can't do it as a job yet. I'm trying to.
Well, hey, you were absolutely right as far as you train with anybody else and being open-minded to other stuff and like that. You definitely have proven that. And so keep that going. I think you're a bright star in the future as far as our community, and we need more like you. So, and what's Brian Rodriguez saying? No, 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 Brian. This is not the biggest number we had. We've got in the 50. We had Doug McCade on. I need you to write that down. Do your homework.
Do it.
All right. Now, last but not least, No King. Let's hear it.
So I started in 2016, 2017 under Guru Brian Lucas, and that was called, he was part of the Premier chain at that period in time, and then he branched off into Premium because I guess they were going downhill.
Yeah.
And so he taught me a blend of a couple systems. He taught me a blend of Inasanto Kali with Bikiti and Modern Arnis. And he taught me Krav Maga and then Pukalancha Mundi, a little bit of Pukalancha Mundi, which is probably his primary system. And then he retired and gave just about everything, his belonging wise, everything to me. So that he had left. So I have all of his uniforms. I have his belt, his patches, things of that sort. And then I went and started with Bill Craver, who's actually my across the street neighbor. And he taught me a blend of Serrata and Tabata Balintawak because he was a student under Graciela Casillas. And then he trained with Grandmaster Bobby for a little bit of time. And so, it's an interesting combination, but it oddly works. And I really enjoyed learning it. And then he kind of stopped doing it for a while. And then I decided I'm going to start teaching people, private lessons and offering that whatnot stuff. And Jacob here is my right-hand man. He's helped me almost the entire way. Yeah. I've been teaching for the past 3 years now, and he's been helping me with the past year. So I couldn't. He's a huge help. And let's see, I've done one seminar with Grandmaster Bobby, which was a huge joy. So any chance that I get to train with people, I typically take it up. Mike Parsons is another guy that I've worked with a little bit, who has experience with Professor and Guru Dan. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, Datu, did Daniel Sano, did he do Modernies ever?
No, but there's a two-part episode
or one system
issue
he didn't do
of there's a two-part issue of Inside Kung Fu where they talk about some things that happen, and actually Remy met Inasano, and Remy was doing a demo, and then Inasano invited him over to his house for a barbecue, and he brought Dean Stockwell with him. And Remy was all like, dude, you gotta embrace your heritage. Remy was all about people doing Filipino martial arts, and and he encouraged Guru Dan to get more into it. I think he was already on that path already, but but Inasano came up and got an autograph the book and stuff. There's a lot of urban legends about the two of them interaction. The only thing I've seen in print was that article, and I didn't see anybody cry foul at the time. I heard they did get along. I heard they didn't get along. I've heard a whole bunch of things. But by all the accounts that, Remy was telling me about it, but it was, Rick Mitchell was the author. Rick was a Remy student first. Eventually also started training with Manang Bobby Tabuada, and but he wrote a lot of articles, and there's like I said, it was a two-part issue in Inside Kung Fu went over this, and but it talked about how they met at a demo, got his autograph, and then they went to a barbecue with Dean Stockwell. So
okay,
because Remy was living with him at the time, so
it's just funny when I got certified in ensemble, and I haven't done it in a while, or I do pieces of it. But one thing obviously heavily into Cabalas, PTK, Lameco's in there. I mean, a bunch of other stuff, Bahala, non-Eric, et cetera. But I just assume Arnis was in, based on just everything he did. But
the FMA community is a little snobby when it comes towards modern, and I think the issue is because Remy uses the word modern, which was a great marketing tool in the Philippines, but for the States it sucks. I mean, we don't want to hear modern Arnis like combat Hapkido or combat judo. We want to hear all Filipino words or all Asian words.
Yeah.
And when you crossed hands with Remy, well, that's a whole nother animal. I mean, no one questioned his physical ability.
But, I've never heard anybody question it. So, yeah.
But some people made some comments post Remy. But the thing here is, hell, Ty Botting, he did a video on YouTube, and Filipinos were taking shots at him by, how dare you modernize our art? I'm like, listen, you moron. It was the guy who saved the art called it modern Arnis, and that goes back to 1957 in the Philippines. So stay in your lane and know what you're talking about. So I think.
How ironic.
Well, the other thing too is when Remy first came over, they thought he was in bed with Marcos.
Yeah.
Because when I wish to God you could have had Bruce Chutnick on, because he talks about the story.
We're still working on it. I haven't given up. So.
And he talks about how he became a student of Remy. But at the time, one of the backstory was all the Filipinos in the Bay Area thought he was Marcos's boy, and they didn't like that. So there was also that thing, and I think there was a lot of distancing because of that stuff. And and Guru Dan was a student of Angel, and who knows how protective. I don't know how open those guys were letting people continue with others.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but I was just curious. All right, so Chris Chiu,
what's no living art
for all you guys, and that. So, just what do you see? And we're going to get into deeper there, but just a general sense. Not looking at FMA as a whole, although that can be part of it, but within the lens of just modern Arnis, where do you see the future? Just off the cuff, what your opinion, no wrong or right answer, just off the cuff. What do you see?
To answer this question, I got to give a little bit of a backstory in my experiences, one more bit. When I first started really getting heavily into the modern Arnis, I told myself that because I never got to touch hands with Professor Praces, I wanted to meet as many of his actual students as possible, not just people who were at his seminars, which granted, I know I could still learn from them too, but I wanted to meet with the guys and the gals who actually got to know the man, not just his martial arts, but know him personally. So my dad, obviously one of those ones. The second one I ever met, actually, I got to give a shout out here, Ty Botting. He was the second modern Arnis student I've ever met outside of my dad's organization. We in DC, and this guy was working out in one of my dad's gyms, and all of a sudden they found out they were in the same gym together because they'd known each other about each other for years. But so shout out to you, Ty. But I think I've met over 11 personal students of Professor and touched hands with every single one of them.
11, wow.
Yeah. Pat Bailey, Brian Zelinsky, Brian Frank, Dan Anderson, Andrew Filardo, Janet Alfs, Roland Rivera. If I'm forgetting a name, Jerome Barber, Datu Tim. If I'm forgetting a name, I apologize. I have it written down just because I wanted to keep that in mind, because I want to know what he wanted. Not just what he wanted, but what he was able to do. So what better work with the guys who got to work with him firsthand. So to answer the question of what do I see the future of modern Arnis, I have to look at what he, as Professor, wanted it. And what I've picked up about the man, I view it as Professor would want everyone to create their own journey. He would not want carbon copies of everyone the same exact thing, because that would ruin the whole idea of the art within your art. Granted, everyone can spot a modern Arnis guy. We could spot a Bikini Tersha guy. We could spot that, the S should be relatively similar to Professor, but I don't think he wanted everyone doing it the exact same way. That's why he created the term modern, or coined the term modern in his name, modern Arnis. I've done some stuff and some training, and someone said to me, "Oh, Chris, that's not modern Arnis." Well, sure it is. well, why? How is it modern? I go, because I put it in my modern Arnis. That's why it's modern Arnis. It's always evolving, a living art. GM Bobby, God love him. He's one of the best in the world, not only martial arts, but as a person. When I first went to one of his seminars, he said, if you do Muay Thai, put it in your Balintawak, and then it is your Balintawak. If you do Jiu-Jitsu, put it in your Balintawak, and then it is your Balintawak. So the future of modern Arnis is whatever, just from the, not going organizationally or structurally, because that's a different, I can touch on that later with Datu Tim's question, but just as the art itself, the future is ever growing as long as people want to continue learning it. It is never going to be an end to that art, because I don't think you can ever stop adding to it. GM Brian was at GM Chad's camp a couple weeks ago, and he said, think of modern Arnis as big fat grandma cooking in the kitchen. She doesn't have measurements. She just throws stuff in there and it tastes amazing. That's modern Arnis. It's the stew. Just keep throwing stuff in there and it's going to keep getting better. Obviously, that analogy only goes so far, because if you throw too much stuff in there, the stew tastes bad. But you know what I'm saying. The art is never going to die as long as people keep wanting to learn it and want to keep adding to it. Yeah. And I'm sure Doc can attest to this. What modern Arnis was in the early 80s versus what it is today, while there should be some similar, there should be some visual things that you can tell is modern Arnis, I don't think everyone moves the same. My dad will tell me that all the time. He goes, Chris, what we did in the 80s isn't what we did in the 90s. That's not what we did after he died.
Evolution, sure.
It has to evolve. If the art doesn't evolve, it dies. So you have to keep adding to it. And that's how I see the future of modern Arnis, just from the art, not structural or organizational, but we can go on that later.
Okay. Great. So same question for you, and then we're going to get to Datu. Noah, I mean, so within respects to modern Arnis, like, what do you foresee the future with it? No right or wrong answer. Just what do you think?
Coming from a quote unquote member of the younger generation, I think, I've talked with a lot of people around my age, students that I've taught, people I've trained with. I think the biggest turnoff for us is people in the martial arts community with huge egos, in particular. And there's a lot of people that are around, my age and younger people that are turned away from it. And I think that is a definite killer when it comes to trying to preserve the arts and get more people to join and learn it. But as far as people learning it, I think as long as we can get enough people to learn it and enough people to preserve it, I think that it could still go a long ways. And like Chris said, I always saw it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So what you're saying is it'll be in good hands as long as we got some people there that are going to continue to promote it.
One more thing real quick, just because I remember this is something that the professor would say at every seminar, every class, every camp, everything. My dad was there. He always heard professors say this: welcome everyone, which I think is the biggest asset we can have. If we're not welcoming, if we're not being inclusive.
Yeah, if we're turning people off, it's not going to help. Like Noah was saying with ego.
I've been to martial arts schools that don't like you being trained in other styles. They'll try to fight you, like, oh, you're such and such. Well, let's prove it on the mat right now. I just wanted to come and say hi, maybe learn something. But if you want to fight,
yeah. Datu. So far as what these young lads were saying, what do you kind of touched upon this in several episodes. We've had talks on this. I want to get your future plans for those who might not have heard it, and then we're going to go into what these young cats can do to actually make things happen. So what say you?
Well, okay, so I'm the old guy, so I'm the first gen student. So now and we all give our opinions, and mine's going to be a different opinion, and I'm not trying to bust anyone's chops. The reason why modern Arnis was called modern Arnis was because Remy modernized the teaching approach. That's how it started in the Philippines. It wasn't about absorbing what is useful. I mean, that's a Filipino thing to begin with. He cross-trained with so many people in the Philippines before forming modern Arnis, and a lot of people who have their own systems today trained underneath him at one time. Modern Arnis was in the school system, but what he did was, first of all, it was called the Eskrima. He went to Arnis as per his wife's recommendation, because no one else was using that at the time. Just like a lot of people, the Americans, it's funny because RJ Markita just taught a seminar recently at a friends club of mine here in Niagara Falls region. And they go, so you do Kali and Hartman does Arnis. He goes, no. There is no such thing as Kali. Kali is just what the Americans call it because the people who are phenomenal martial artists are terrible historians. And Kali doesn't even exist in the Filipino language. So, but we've let them go with it, and a lot of Filipinos have embraced that themselves because it was a marketing thing. KI was Arnis, and if they wanted to play, they play Arnis, you know. But one of the reasons Remy went, his wife suggested doing Arnis. He went with modern because it was a modern approach. He saw when he was doing Balintawak, because of the close proximity of range, it forced a lot of stick-on-stick combat methodologies, but not exclusively, because if you do Balintawak, there's a lot of skin on stick on flesh as well. So it was the modern teaching approaches where the name comes from. He did absorb a lot of things. There's no question about this. But having been at the end, so when he first came over here, he was able to reach out to other schools by teaching the art within your art. And I use that delivery system to get the word out there, because if I open up an Arnis school in your region and you guys are teaching other martial arts, I'm your competitor. But if I can show how to enhance what you're already doing, now you offer another skill set in that school.
Absolutely.
But at the end, he was trying to standardize the art.
Yeah.
So, and I know because I was an active student with Remy up until he passed away.
I'm sorry, what do you say? What do you mean when you say standardized? Like make it more structured?
Yes.
Okay.
I was working on a written curriculum with him. I was in charge of the forms as one thing from probably about 93 on. And at the last Michigan summer camp, we shot a video, and it didn't turn out well. So he had me do it all by myself because the cadence of all the people it was lighting and cadence was off. When I went to the last camp in the States, and that was the Tucker, Georgia one that Bob Quinn hosted. And Remy had me take all the black belts into another room and teach the forms the way he wanted from that point on. That was one example. If you talk to Chad Doolin and Ty Botting, you would see that when he was what he was good at was encouraging people, but it was our bane at the same time. So if you did something that it wasn't what he wanted, let's say, I'll just say it outright. Let's say you did a technique wrong. His way of correcting wouldn't be, no, don't do that. It's wrong. He would say, oh, you could do that too, but do this instead. And he would hit me with that every now and then. I go, stop that shit. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me how to fix it. Tell me how to make it better. Remy was doing a lot less he wanted the art to be as a standalone program and get away. He wanted to use the delivery system and the recruiting methodology of the art within your art. But he wanted to do the art as a standalone program as well. You know, and when it came to material, there was a lot less of you could do that, and started forming more of a structured program.
Okay.
But here's the problem. It all depends on how often you saw Remy. I saw him twice a month for years. You know, so I would see him 20 plus times a year. You know, and some people would see Remy at camp once a year, and that was it. So how would they know? I mean, you know, I went to 30 camps, and there's a lot of people I met that I only saw him at one camp. You know, and at the time, who had a dedicated school besides me? You know, and that the problem was that, like I said, Remy used this as a nice recruiting thing. So I think when it comes to that portion, I mean, that's what I saw. That's what we talked about. Like I said, we were working on a written curriculum. I mean, I had a written curriculum from John Bryant, which is the Filipino Karate Academy where I started. And Remy was a silent partner in the school. So that's what I built my stuff off of. Now,
where did the curriculum from the Pink Book come from?
Well, that was in the Philippines.
Okay.
See, the Pink Book, so the Pink Book, so the first book is the White Book, The Practical Art of Eskrima. The second book, there's two different covers. There was the pink and the green or blue. The green or blue was the Tagalog version, and the pink book, what he has there, that is the American edition of the Filipino book.
This one here.
Yes. So that originally was done, I think, in 73.
Okay.
But that's an American reprint.
Yeah.
So that was the second book. Then Remy released or did one with O'Hara, which evidently Don Warner is now redoing with permission from Black Belt Magazine. So the book is back in print. Yay. Cool. You can get the pink book still in the Philippines. It's a much smaller book. It's through the Philippine bookstore over there. You can also get the Practical Art of Eskrima periodically if you really dig for it. Once again, in the Philippines. So I like the pink book because it also has the articles with all the stuff that Remy was doing. I actually got into people that said that Remy didn't like tournaments. I'm like, really? Look at the back of the book. There's a whole tournament rule set there. It's just that he didn't want the Americans to fight because they didn't commit to the art and they would lose. Case in point. I mean, if you did Taekwondo 5 days a week and Arnis 1 day a week, how well do you think you would do it in an Arnis tournament? That's just like if you do karate 5 days a week and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 1 day a week, what's going to happen when you go to a Brazilian tournament?
Yeah.
I know. I've been tapped out.
So Datu, all right, here we're gonna flip it back around.
So that goes on that comment. I'm not trying to bust anyone's chops, but
no.
The thing here is I lived it, I saw it, I was there.
Yeah, that's why we have you. That's why we have you here. Okay. All right, we're gonna flip it back around. Noah, then we're swinging back around to Datu. Noah, what do you think you could do, taking kind of a leadership role, regardless of your age, being proactive, regardless of rank, regardless of that, to perpetuate the art? What do you think you could do? And again, we're using Arnis as the focal point here, but of course that could go. This could apply to any art. So what do you think, Carter? What do you think you personally could do to contribute to the perpetuation of Arnis?
So currently, I'm in college, going for a business degree, because this is what I want to do for a living. I want to have my own school. I want to promote as many of the Filipino arts as I possibly can. So for me to promote those arts, modern Arnis, traditional Kali, et cetera, that's how I want to do it. I want to try and get myself more out there, have my own school, and teach it that way. And then currently I'm trying to get a club started at my college campus to teach the arts to the students there as a form of promoting it, because I'm one of very few people in the area that I'm in, and even in West Virginia as a whole, that does this, and when I go to the tournament, people look at me and I'm swinging around a stick and they just look at me with a blank face, and I talked to like Chuck Norris system students and stuff. And I brought out my sticks, and they were like, "What on earth is that?" And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me! You don't know what these are."
Yeah,
especially West Virginia.
Come on, Chuck must have used it in a movie at one time.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to promote it, and like I said, I'm going to college for business because this is what I want to do for a career. Is I want to teach martial arts like my instructors did.
Oh, no. Well, that's fine. This is exactly the answer I was looking for, and I think you articulated it well. So good on you, and I hope some of those things actually come to play out. That's fantastic. Chris, same question. Like, again, what do you think you can do? And you might already be doing it, to perpetuate and be part of the solution. Again, Arnis being the focal point here, but this could crosses the gamut as far as other FMA styles. But what can you do, or again, you might be doing already, to perpetuate Arnis into the future?
I think that's a weird question. Perpetuate into the future.
Growing it, like taking an assertive role in growing the art,
making sure it doesn't die with this
flourishes in the future.
A unique position, and I will never ever use this for any sort of advantage or any sort of gain, but I am in a unique position of being a legacy student, essentially, because my dad is my instructor, and he was a personal student who lived it like Datu Tai from Professor. So I have the term I keep hearing is legacy to live on with, not just in Professor, but in my dad. So I want to carry the wishes of both of those men out, even though I never got to meet Professor, but I know I don't know. I have a good idea of what he wanted from all of my various conversations with people who knew him and worked with him and lived it. What I've been trying to do is just because in Central Florida, there's a bunch of different FMA groups, believe it or not. Florida's a hotbed.
Oh, yeah,
FMA.
absolutely.
I mean, in Central Florida, I found the Orlando Eskrima Club online. I worked with the FCS group. There's Pambuan Arnis out in Gotha. There's my good friend Guru Rob Bray out in Sanford, who is also a Filipino martial arts instructor, also ranked under Arnis International. There's about 6 or 7 other ones. There's other in Claremont. There's FMA is such a big thing in Central Florida, but there was not a lot of modern Arnis.
No.
So I know I've been kind of one of the more vocal. I will not say more skilled or more trained or any of this. And I will just say I'm one of the more vocal modern Arnis guys in the Central Florida area. You know, I started that Instagram page. I'm messaging people. I'm talking to people. I'm trying to get as much exposure of not only Professor Preces, but also my dad. That's the whole purpose of what I've been doing, is sharing their names. And now that I've been doing that and getting more skilled and more trained, people are asking me to teach seminars now. People are asking me to demo things. People are asking me to product test these things. I am doing my best to carry on the arts, 1, by word of mouth, 2, by showing it. You know, that's how stories live on. Stories live on through word of mouth. And then you want to show those stories in action, like, you know, the story. I've heard so many different stories of Professor taking on from 2 guys in a subway to 15 guys in a subway. Doesn't matter. He probably took on some guys in a subway once. But my goal is to carry it on through word of mouth, through training, through exposure, through the teachings. Luckily, the Instagram page is doing very well. So, and as we all know, everything on the internet stays on the internet. No matter how much you want to delete it, it's there.
It's true.
So that Instagram page of all of Professor's videos I've found, and stuff with my dad and stuff with me, stuff working with Datu Tim on a couple of videos, with GM Brian, all those guys I've gotten to work with, is cemented in that Instagram page and will live on the internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to doing it to the full extent that I want to do it, because I'm still working 40 hours a week at a food service industry, plus trying to go to school, plus trying to keep a new relationship working. So
It's a lot.
I'm juggling a lot of things, but at the heart of it all, I'm still focusing on building and creating a legacy that will surpass me and surpass those who came before me. So that's what I'm trying.
No, that's well said. All right, I want you 2 young cats to listen, because Datu is going to give you guys, he's going to give you guys things that you can actually do now. Okay, so I'm going to kick it over to him.
Oh, great! Put no pressure whatsoever.
Yeah.
So personally, I think we're in a rough position. And here's my reason. We need numbers. We need a gene pool to move forward. And like I said, with Professor, I mean, the art didn't have dedicated schools as a plural. I mean, Rocky was on the one show, we talked about it, and there was three dedicated schools. He had one, it closed. John Bryant had another, it closed, and I had one. You know, I see a lot of people in modern East, the art within your art. When Professor passed away, they didn't continue. They just absorbed the art into their art. And it was now the stick program inside of martial art X, Y, or Z. And I've told a whole bunch of times when I've had people come to me that did Kempo or karate, and they go, I do some kind of FMA, but we don't know it is in our system. And I watch them and go, oh, well, you're doing Sarada. Oh, well, you're doing Inasano Kali. Oh, you're doing, looks like Kombatan to me, or something else. But it's not by its name. I mean, just like a lot of people cross-trained into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and added the moves into their base art, they didn't promote the art by name. And unfortunately, that's the challenge that we're running into right now. I think as a whole, there's a couple things that we have to do if we're thinking about moving forward. One, things can't be esoteric. It's got to be, I don't want to say black and white, but it's got to be in shades of gray. I always say that what we do is not carved in stone, but more molded in clay. We need to have a written curriculum to follow. I've had people who joined my organization from other modern groups, and the one thing they liked is that it was a very tangible thing. What do I need for these belts? And they knew exactly what the material was required. We need a dedicated training center. We needed what is 50 SH?
It's only Renee.
50 shades. 50
Shades.
shades. Okay, all right.
50 shades. Yeah.
You know, if we're going to be an organization, we need to be organized. So if we're doing an organization, let's say you guys are doing something like that, do you have a headquarters? Do you have a written curriculum? Do you have a website that people can find you and send people so they can see where all the schools are?
Yeah.
These are a lot of things that we could do, and it's not an expensive thing to do. It's fairly inexpensive these days to have a website and list what schools are. Remy had he had a black belt test. He didn't have a belted curriculum. So if people sat there and were just expecting Remy to do it, well, get off your ass and do your own thing. You know, I was very fortunate that I had a full white to black curriculum. When I took one of my students, my first student, to the Michigan summer camp for his first test, he's like, there's nothing on this test I haven't done. So that's what happens when we have that kind of guidance. And I adhere to it, but it's a guideline. There's certain things I don't necessarily sweat. Sometimes I teach things early. Sometimes I teach things late. But I know that these core material is going to be out there. If, you know, how it, and the thing here is, when it comes to forms, we should all look alike, because that's what a form is. But when it comes to expression, there's system and style. My martial system is modern Arnis. My style is Tim Hartman, the way my swagger, the way I carry myself, and everyone can express themselves in their own way here. And I can't even see. That's bad. What was that there?
So that's okay. Brian Thomas is he's got to go to bed.
Oh, okay. Night, Brian.
And you're all treasures your stories.
Thank you, Ron.
Oh boy.
But you know, I mean, if this is what we're going to go for, you know, we need numbers, and that's the biggest thing. We need to produce people, not promote people. That's been one of my things as of late. You know, I'm not going to promote anyone. I'm going to produce them to pass something, and more importantly, to pass on something.
Yeah.
You know, my personal legacy. I'm happy. I'm happy with where I've been. I bump into parents all the time that I haven't seen their kids in years because they've graduated and they move on to a different part of the country for jobs. But the parents will come up and say, you know, Tim, you did a really good thing by my kids. They gave them the confidence to do X, Y, and Z. Hell, I got Ryan doing movies right now. You know, he doubled William Dafoe for Green Goblin. He was on Stranger Things. He got beat up by Daredevil recently. He got beat up. He gets beat up by a lot of people. He needs a new wingman. I told him if he has me as a wingman, he'll get beat up differently.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing that's and here's why I'm passionate about this. Okay, so I'm very pleased with my students because I tell them they have such a big head start over me, because I started this when I was 19. I've got a 19-year-old who's a third-degree black belt with me. What a huge head start! What a potential of surpassing me, which is what I need them to do. Because the art, we need to be, each generation needs to be better. But the thing that really, there's a spot that really resonated with me, and I didn't have it when we talked about something recently on the show. And let me just look this up here. I've got a document right in front of me. Okay. Our draft mission statement: the organization preserve the art of modern East. Okay. Right here. Remy's will. Dan Anderson posted it in its entirety. I have a problem with that because we didn't need to see where the estate went to. When it comes to the martial art thing that was never executed, I think it's everyone's right to know what it was. And there's a list of names, which Bruce was one of the people. Chris's father was one of the designated people to be part of a board to carry the art on, but they never executed that. So they cut a lot of people out. And of course, the person who was the chairman of the board, Remy's medical advisor, financial advisor, and all this other stuff seemed to have disappeared and possibly stolen a lot of money from the estate and others. Sabotage Remy's legacy, in my opinion, which I'm allowed to have my opinion, because I direct the mission of the organization will be to promote and teach and preserve the art of modern Arnis, which has been my life's passion and work. I'm 50. I'll be turning 58 in May. Dean gets there before me. You're older. I've been doing this since I was 19 years old. This is what I do. I don't half-ass this. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm very passionate about it. And when I say this, I want everyone to understand I'm not trying to be a dick, but this is what I've chosen as a profession. And I see a lot of people who don't take it as seriously, which I understand they don't have to, but I also see people who have made it rough for others. And we talk about the egos and all this other stuff that Noah was popping in there. And a lot of people undermining Remy's mission for out of greed or insecurity and all this other stuff. So with those challenges and all the stuff that they've done, we need to get focused and work on what's really be people can't be honest with you if they can't be honest with themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I've written off most of the community. I work with individuals, but I did the Modern East Reunion Camp, which was the biggest thing in the States since Remy's passing. I did the 65th anniversary camp, which was the second biggest thing in the States since Remy's passing.
Yeah.
We had 80 people at the reunion camp. We had 78 people at the anniversary camp. And that one I just did on my own. I mean, because like I said, I've written off a bunch of people because people will show up to my events when my wallet opens up and disappears as fast as it shuts down, and they won't reciprocate. So but when we do this, if we want the art to go, we have to continue. We need to understand on a scale basis. Because I got a group. What, you got 5 people? What the hell is that going to do in the future? And let's get back to what I talked about. What happens? So here's an idea, Chris. What happens if your father's wrecked tomorrow? He's in the car accident, not me, and he can't do the art anymore, or God forbid, he's no longer with us. What's your game plan?
As far as what? As far as carrying on the legacy, or as far?
I mean, does your art have a direction? The organization have a direction? I mean, remember he's got a following, and it's unfortunately with martial art businesses, you can't sell a martial arts school. You can sell its contents, but the thing here is, if I'm a student of Dean's, Dean sells the school to you, Dean leaves. Guess where I'm going? I'm going with Dean, and if Dean's not going to be there anymore, because it was personality driven.
There is, it's understood that I will be the guy to take it whenever, he's whenever he doesn't want it anymore. So I'll be the guy teaching now whenever they think I'm ready. If he were to suddenly pass tomorrow, I would adhere to his senior black belts and people he trusts and determine if they think I'm ready to take it. And if not, then I won't yet. That's fine with me.
So then what happens to Arnis International?
I'll keep doing everything I can to promote it and support it. And when his black belts who are higher ranking than me, my seniors, say that I have done, or in their mind, they think that I have done the best that I can do to achieve what my father would want me to do to be part of that, then that's probably what would happen. Or if I don't know if my dad has a will, I'm sure he has it somewhere in his closet, but he probably put me down as one of the guys to take over.
So let's go back to that will. The will was never executed when it came to Remy's. I'm not trying to. I'm just talking about. I'm talking about history now. We learn from history.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who Remy put in charge. People are only going to follow who they want.
But that's the difference, though, between Remy's following and my dad's following. My dad has a much smaller following than Remy's. And also, I think that there's another big difference between the groups and organizations. My father did not create as many black belts as Professor did. I think very few people had as many students as Professor did, at least when it comes to FMA, or not students, but exposure.
Yeah.
And I think that when we look at this and look at how the will was executed, again, I wasn't there for it. I wasn't around for it. I've only talked to people that are. I look at, and from what I've heard about Professor, and I think that, Dr. Tim, I think this might be something you agree with. He was so good at making everyone feel so special that everyone thought that they could be in charge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like the store once, there was some guy walked into a store and said, "Oh, I'm the East Coast representative of Modern Arnis."
Yeah.
Orlando, my dad knew the owner and the guys, and my dad wasn't there for this, but the owner says, "Oh, you're a Modern Arnis. Do you know Bruce Chiu?" I never heard of him. He goes, "Oh, really? You're the representative? You never heard of Bruce Chiu?" Nope, never heard of him. Well, he came in here last week with Professor. So who are you?
Well, you know what? I didn't know your father till about 97, 98. And if someone said, "Who's Bruce Chiu?" to me, I'm like, I have no clue who you are. But I mean, who he is. And I'm not trying to bust his chops. I mean, I like your father.
That's where the problem lies with how Remy's will was executed, in my opinion. This one who got to is now living.
That's the problem.
Everyone thought that they had the voice, which, in my personal belief, everyone's entitled to lead their own journey. There's nothing against it. No one's going to try to tell me what I can and can't walk. Like people have tried to tell me I shouldn't cross train. They're not the ones in charge of my martial arts journey. If I have the opportunity to train with GM Bobby, I'm going to take that every chance I get. Just because it's not the traditional norm of a student who should be devoted to one art for 50 years or something like that. I believe Professor was a nomad in so many ways. He didn't have a home, like you said, or like cross-trained a lot, like you said. We should all be allowed to do that, and then take and so absorb what we think is best for ourselves and what is best to preserve the art. I get so many of these martial artists out there, and I'll go back to your question now, I guess. What do I do if my dad dropped dead tomorrow? Well, then I guess I'm taking over until someone says no, because it's my dad's art, and I have his name.
There you go. Put yourself in the driver's seat.
I'm not trying to get black belts by all means. I know all of them personally, all their phone numbers. I would be reaching out to them constantly, asking for their advice on how to better lead this organization, because they've known my dad longer than me. They've known him for.
Here, before I get to Datu, Chris, I like your answer. You're going to take over until somebody tells you not to. Chris,
well,
that's what you go, man. Okay. Before I ask Datu about this, Noah, I want you to read this statement by Brian Canada, and just off the top of your head, no right or wrong, just give me what you feel just on this statement.
Can you read the statement? Because it's it's small.
It's still up there for me. I agree with it. Yeah, I think.
No right or wrong answer. Just tell how you feel. That's right.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I agree with it in the sense that I feel like if more than one system kind of banded together to promote their arts, it would probably reach more people than one system promoting their.
You mean like they're separate factions under the umbrella? If the factions work together.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what happened to Modern Arnis.
Okay, I tend to agree with you, Noah. All right, Datu.
But can I ask a question first before we get to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because with what Brian Canetta said is, it sounds to me like unification is what you need, and I completely agree with that. My then question is, how do we determine who do we unify under? Because from what it sounds like, and how this is where Modern Arnis has the biggest issue, and I'll say this because it's what I've observed. Everyone that I've met, to some extent, believes that was the professor. Oh, he named me this, he named me that, he named me this. So I'm the guy that does this. Well, I did this for him. Well, I did this for him. I think Modern Arnis was one of the more disorganized organizations in all of FMA, which granted, maybe I'm saying that too harshly and too brash, but I'm like Datu said, I'm entitled to my own opinion. It's my own opinion.
Yeah.
And I feel like
you might not be wrong. I don't know if you're so
I've met
on that.
And I've met not all the camps in Modern Arnis, but I've met some of the big ones.
Yeah.
And a lot of them
definitely not going to be easy. Datu.
Let me ask. Oh, now it's my turn to ask a question, Chris. Okay, so you said when you've been around a bunch of the camp, you've met around the camps. I mean, are you saying you've been to the training camps or the different groups out there for Modern Arnis?
I have been to, off the top of my head, I know I've interacted and talked with at least 3 different quote unquote groups. I've met with some Datus, I've met with some of the Mots, I've met with some of the guys who were neither of those things, but were definitely in the Modern Arnis for more than 40 years and were with Professor for a long time. That's how I'm viewing camps or the.
So here's my question: how many organizations are existing in the United States right now?
Modern
Arnis organizations.
I don't know. I know there's Marpio, unless I think they might have gone quiet. F America, my dad's organization, yours, or Chad Bailey has an organization. Bram Frank has an organization.
Okay, okay. So right off the bat, Chad Bailey does progressive Arnis.
Yes,
it's not modern Arnis. He doesn't. It's
okay. Yep, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay, so if we're talking about promoting Remy's art, listen. I'm gonna throw another one out here. Here's a great practitioner, mad ass skills. No one's gonna argue this one with me. Kelly freaking Warden.
Okay? Absolutely.
But he doesn't carry Remy's banner. And when I mean that, let's think about this.
He doesn't.
Modern Arnis is part of the JK Renegade Jeet Kune Do synthesis that he does. It's not the focal point of what he teaches. So we need people promoting the art. So okay, I really don't know anything about Chad Bailey. I've met him once, and that was when Ty Botting was being inducted to that Hall of Fame that Michael Bates was done. Allegedly, we've been at a whole bunch of events, and but he was a student of somebody else's. Like I said, I've been around. I mean, people knew me up and down the coast because I went to all the seminars. Mm-hmm. Most people didn't do that. What they would do is they'd hit a bunch of the camps. But we need people who are carrying Remy's banner. Now, Chad promotes Remy's name along with everything else he's doing. He's not producing modern Arnis students. Kelly Warden, another person, not producing modern Arnis students. If we're going to promote Remy's art, we need to promote Remy's art. We need to produce people to carry on that legacy, not a hodgepodge of other things. And I'm not trying to say that in a disrespectful way.
Yeah.
But the thing here is, and listen, Remy trained with a whole bunch of things. I mean, he was one of Anchamba Khan's top fighters. Modern Arnis, one of its biggest influences is, wait for it, Balenciaga Eskrima. That's probably where the modernization of the stick-on-stick contact came from. It's also probably where the angles of attack came from, because the angles of attack are identical, but the delivery system is slightly different. After angles 1 and 2, all the angles, first of all the angles are taught in pairs except for the two center lines, the 12, the 5, and the 12. If you look at it, besides angle 1 and 2, the rest of the angles are flipped. Mm-hmm. So there's a very good chance that Remy took it and just flipped it. I knew Tim from New England back in the 80s. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Joe Rebello, man.
All right. Is it possible as leaders in next generation? Okay, here's a question in here. Hold on here. All right. Noah, I want you to take first crack at this. God damn. How are you going to lead in your way to unify the factions? Is it possible? But as leaders of the next generation, how do you plan to do it? So this is for you and Chris. Yeah, so Noah first. So if you were in this position and you had the power, like what would you do?
Well, if I had the power, I mean, because right now I can only do as much as I can do. Being a college student.
Assuming that you had stature, you were recognized. I mean, within the modernist community, like, what do you think you would do?
Well, I like what Chad said as well, where he said, what we need is support. And I think that you could classify the support as unification as well. And what I mean by that is if you're banding together to give each other support, that is a form of unification. And I think that what Kurt says, how would I go about unifying that? I would do exactly that. I would try and get as many different, authorities, people, systems together as I can, so that we can all support each other and promote these arts so that they don't go extinct. Because if we don't have more and more younger people and more people that want to join on and continue to help uphold these things, it's going to die out, regardless of what we try and do. And so
the best thing you said? You know what the best thing you said, I think, in my opinion, when you just said, get everybody in the damn room and when they're sitting across at a table from one another,
Absolutely.
they're not doing it on a computer, they're not doing this, but they're in a room. And you know what? See what comes out of it.
It'd
So
be like
I
an AA meeting or a therapy session.
I'm not saying there's not going to be some arguing. I'm not going to say there's going to be some
Yeah,
name calling,
yeah, you'll get your argument for sure.
That's martial and ballet. Let them fight.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, rattan therapy would probably help, but at the end of the day, you would need to have a moderator who actually knew what they were talking about. They'd have to have some facts.
I think that'd be good having a moderator. I can see that.
But you'd have to have someone that'd be willing to do research and stuff.
Yeah.
And here's the problem. You know what? We can talk about everything except for religion, politics, and martial arts. For some reason, people are too damn polarized on that. I mean, if you talk about what food you like, if you don't like Italian food, no one freaks out. You just go have a different type of thing, But the thing here, I mean, here's the thing. I put this challenge out a long time ago.
Okay.
I challenged the community. Start producing more students. I don't think they got it in them. Prove me wrong. Prove me freaking wrong. Let's develop this. Because my thing was, because the problem I ran into is I have no problem. I do my own thing until people put themselves in my crosshairs. When they do stuff that get in my way, that people do stuff to take shots at me because they don't like things. I would just do me, and that's it. But then, I changed something, and how dare you change something? I'm not listen. If it stays in the spirit, we talked about the rules of movement, and someone freaked out about that. I'm like, dude, Remy would, one of the big things oh my God, would he hammer people on his puño size? You're like, no, it's only supposed to be 1 or 2 fingers. And some people, he may not have had that conversation because there's bigger problems he might have been fixing. But he constantly talked about that. But for me to tell my students, it's like, all right, well, listen, go like this, 2 fingers. That's one of our rules, our rules. And once it's a rule, you think, okay, don't break the rule. When we would do follow through swings, if it came from the right, you'd have your right foot in front. Came from the left from in front. That's to clear the path for the weapon so it doesn't hit you. That's another rule of movement Remy would teach us. And I'm not saying I had these freaking tablets that I came from the mountain.
Yeah.
But and people like going nuts on this and like wasting my time
on puño
and taking shots at it, And it's like, for Christ's sake, get over yourself and focus on the big things. And my thing is, listen, do the work yourself. Produce people. You can't do it, get on someone's side. Join a group. I don't care what group it is. Get in part of a group. You don't want to do that? Then get the hell out of the way. But the thing here is you got people out there who have 5, 10 people. How's that going to carry on the art? Especially when people aren't even doing.
Maybe they're starting, but they're trying to grow it. If they're trying to grow that 5 to 10, or making a concerted effort to grow that 5 to 10. I have a couple questions here. Okay, one, something that Chad wrote interests me, and I hope he's still watching. Chad, if you are, here's a question for you, even though you're in the audience, but hopefully you're still here and you can answer it. Would you attend? So, Chad, would you attend if there could be this convention to bring in all the head figure together, Bruce, Chiu, whoever else, some of the Tappy guys, Callie Warden, Datu, whoever else, in a room? Would you support that? My second question is, even though you made it your own, would you consider just teaching the Modernese part if someone was interested, or also for the sake of perpetuating Remy Press's legacy? So hopefully you're still watching this, but those are the 2 questions. Chris,
well, I'm going to throw it to you. I wouldn't be willing to go in a room like that because of all the nonsense. Because I tried doing that stuff and I'm done with it.
I think it's time that Dean Franco holds a Modernese court.
Yeah,
I'm going to be at the head of the court. We got Bruce, Chris. I want you this question here, Chris.
Okay,
is it possible to preserve the art banner while allowing to evolve to modern needs, and whatever else you wanted to throw in there before then?
Is it possible to preserve the art / banner while allowing it to evolve to modern? Absolutely, it is. And this is where absolutely. And this is where my question would come into this.
Okay.
When we're trying to preserve Remy's legacy, or modern Arnis, are we trying to preserve his wishes, or are we trying to preserve his martial art? Because those could be two things.
Okay.
From what I understand, Professor was not a huge fan of. This is going to sound like I'm trying to accuse or target anything. I'm not trying. I'm just saying this from what I've heard from everybody. Because I have, my dad had the storage unit for Professor for 19 years. And we finally got to go through it. And I found his itinerary for, it was like 1980 or 1970, something like that. He had 50 seminars and 10 camps a year. He didn't have a home dojo. A lot of his students had home dojos where they trained and did what their thing is. Yeah. Are we trying to promote his wishes? Or I'm sorry, not his wishes, but his views and his perspectives on things, or we're trying to promote just the art? Because I think we can do both, and we can also do them separately. Because Professor, from what everyone tells me, was a pretty unique individual in how he viewed the world and what he wanted from people. My dad told me a story. He asked Professor a question. Professor, should we join I'll just say a name that may or may not be real, Arnis the Modern Arnis Federation or the Modern Arnis Incorporation? He said, Professor said, why does it matter? I'm not in either of them. So are we trying to, when we're talking about promoting the future of modern Arnis, are we focusing on doing things that we think he wanted us to do, or are we doing things that he didn't want us to do? Not that's saying either one, but I feel like we can get so caught up, and I think that's where I understand what Dr. Tim is saying. He's saying, how do we promote Remy's art the way it was supposed to be in those curriculums that they were creating towards the end? Because that is the written foundation of the art. That's the art. Should we be doing that?
Point.
Or should we be promoting Remy's ideology of, hey, I'm going to do seminars. I'm not going to have a school.
Yeah.
If you're going to do seminars, you're probably not going to have a straight up written curriculum because you're not going to have as many students going to seminars. You're going to have a bunch of seminar attendees. We were talking to Guru Dan Lohman about this, and someone asked the question between the difference of Combatant and modern Arnis. And my dad made the observation of Combatant had a lot more students. Professor had a lot more seminar attendees.
Yeah.
Professor had more seminars. That would be the case. So what are we trying to promote? Are we trying to promote seminar circuits? Are we trying to promote big camps? Are we trying to promote dojo-style curriculum structure organizations? That's what and this is where I think Professor did not lay it out correctly in my limited viewing of the Will and Dan Anderson's book. I don't think he set out a clear message of what he want all of his people to do. I truly think he just said, go out and do what you think is right. So that's what
good points, man. Especially on like, how do we, in other words, the point I think you made, man, which should really bring out some thought, and hopefully Datu may have some insight on this. Just like, do some folks really know what he wanted, or are folks now just kind of saying, well, this is what I think he wanted, so I'm going to do this. I'm not really sure what he wanted. I think I'm going to do this.
Or I know what he wanted. That's not, you don't. You don't know what he wanted on one seminar. You don't. You just don't. But like guys like Datu Tim, guys like my dad, guys like Brian Zielinski, guys like Bram and Dan, people who, my dad, when Professor would call my home phone, my mother said he couldn't tell if it was Professor speaking or my grandpa speaking because they're both Asians with heavy accents. So Professor called my house pretty regularly at one point.
Wow.
My dad was one of the guys. He would know what he wanted, but also I think the Professor would tell each individual student certain things.
I'm sure he did, depending on, I think that's fair too, what you just mentioned. Like, who knows what he told these folks, maybe not intentionally, but in the heat of them, in the moment or whatever was going on. But I think the biggest thing you made a point is, in my opinion, is like, do we really know what he wanted, like the future to do, or the people that he left? And Dot, do you have any insight on that, like far as what you would guess, like what he wanted?
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the people, the comments. You made a couple good comments. I'm going to talk about that right now. We did not understand the man. Filipino language is the minority of the Asian languages, or at least back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Remy would say stuff, and people would not try to understand the concept. Ty and I go to the Philippines. I started going. Ernesto brought me over. Oh, let me just do something here. Hold on.
Dog wants to come back in again.
Anything you want to add, Noah? Anything you want to add to what Chris was saying?
Nothing in particular. I mean, I think everything he's saying is spot on. Right on the money.
I agree. Chris has more insight than I.
I'm just
Chris, you continue to amaze me. I thought you brought some. You both actually. I thought you both brought some excellent stuff. Yeah. So
Thank you.
you guys are doing incredibly well.
Noah's partner's doing a great job sitting there.
Is he? Yeah.
No, anytime he wants to chime in, go ahead.
Yeah, you can give your input. Yeah.
I'm just here to be part with him,
Yeah. But if you want something you want to say, just raise your hand. I'll get you in. No worries.
Teacher, I have a question. No.
Yeah, get out. Do your answer. No, just kidding. By the way, I like the hook sword.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I have more. There they are. They're behind my Godzillas. I have more swords than a normal person probably should own. My Filipino ones are up here. I have a Chris and a Barong. But those are the one swords. Those are the only swords that I own out of maybe 50 swords that I've ever cut myself with, and that is why they are bolted to my wall.
That's why they're bolted.
You used to touch them.
Yeah.
Ooh, Rodney said something very good there. There's the art and the expression of the arts. The art must be defined and unchanging, usually its principles. Yeah.
And Dr. Tim went to punch the wall.
I had to get bones for my co-host over here. So listen, first of all, people didn't understand Remy. I'm going to say it right now. And if you've talk to somebody from another country who didn't speak English as their primary language, you would have to ask the same question multiple times, because a lot of times you got to think about Remy. English was probably his fourth or fifth language.
Yeah.
He spoke several Filipino dialects.
Mm-hmm.
And we would talk. He's like, P's and F's are backwards. Chris, I am sad now because it is time to depart. Like, yes, professor. Every time I depart, tears come to people's eyes.
Yeah.
When you would translate, you say, you do more better. Ty started learning the Tagalog language.
Yeah.
And when you translate the words verbatim, that's exactly what the Filipino interpretation, like how you would say that, but it's not the proper English way. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of times Remy couldn't articulate what he wanted. The other thing was people chose to interpret things another way. Yeah. So what did you hear and what you chose to hear? So there was a person who Remy encouraged somebody to write a letter or an article for one of these magazines. And he goes, well, Remy, I'm not even a black belt with you. What should I do? Well, if someone says anything, just let them know that you're the international self-defense consultant for the organization. So the person writes the letter and signs that. Remy didn't say sign it. Remy said, if someone says something, just tell them that. Mm-hmm. But instead, they chose to interpret things. And I think the problem is, listen, did Remy try to make everyone feel good? Of course he did. But was there, at the one camp, he goes, hey, listen, you know what? I'm from another culture. This is like 99. I'm from another culture. If I do something to offend you, I'm sorry. It's not my intent. It's just my ways, and how humble is someone to do that, to say that. So when it comes to people, there's definitely a bunch of people out there who may have heard something they think. Dean, how many Filipinos have you dealt with on a regular basis? A consistent, like, off Filipino specifically that you dealt with on a regular basis?
Regular basis? No, not many. No. On a regular basis? No.
So I would ask Remy the same question time and time again, and I would get a nuanced, different answer every time I talked to him. Because I think the first couple times he didn't understand, because I would ask him a question. He took it from English to maybe Tagalog, and then from Tagalog into Cebuano, and then translate it back. And I think sometimes things went sideways. Listen, Remy did encourage people. He made everyone felt special. There's no question about that. No question. He would sit there and say, oh, you're my protege. Well, what does the word protege mean? Does it mean successor? I have had many proteges that I've dumped a lot of information into, but they're my protege at that time. That is not my chosen one. This is the person I'm saying, okay, who's your latest protege? Well, that's this person over here. So I think part of the thing is, there. Now, as far as promoting, there's 3 sides to a story: yours, mine, and the truth. And unfortunately, you're a 1 generation away, so you add another factor away from that, Chris, because you didn't know Remy. And I hate to say it this way because I've heard all those old school guys. Hey, Chris, when were you born? Oh shit, I was a black belt before you were born. I don't want. I had someone do that to me, someone you actually know, and I almost punched him in the mouth. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, is how much he started before me. I'm still better at the art than he is. So what has he been doing, wasting his time? That being said, I said this earlier, the principle of modern arts, there's the system and then there's the style. The system is a formula. So Remy, okay, so let's use colors. Remy is red. Okay? Red. Your Kung Fu, Chris, is blue. Art within your art. When you put the 2 together, what do you get?
Purple.
Okay. Is that red?
Yes.
It's purple. You cannot make purple without red, but if you take out the red, what do you got? You're back to blue. My thing is that I teach someone needs, when you do the art with the art, you got all these guys that mix all these different colors with red, but it's not red.
But is modern red?
What?
Is modern Arnis itself red? Because didn't he cross-train to create the art?
It's his synthesis. It's his expression. Doesn't matter what you cross-train. This is the guy. There's no one representing what he did. Well, actually, there is. That's this guy. I'm not blending it. I started in the art. The thing here is, and this is the big thing, if you do the art within your art, and then you're teaching that synthesis, you're no longer teaching what he taught. So here we go. Masters of Tappy Tappy. Perfect example. Brian Zolinsky is a good example of what you take Filipino martial arts and blend it with Kempo karate. Kenny Smith, Filipino martial arts, blending it with Okinawan martial arts, specifically Ishinryu. Part of your father's expression, Arnis and Kung Fu. You can go through the line of all these people. Chuck Goss has done Tang Sudo and Judo with Filipino martial arts. It's not Filipino martial arts. Modern Arnis, as what he was teaching it as the synthesis, was how to enhance your primary system with Filipino concepts without compromising the integrity of that base system. Now,
so then, are you saying that it only works if it was your first art?
It's not what I said.
No. I'm just curious because I was just making sure I understood what you were saying.
What I'm saying is, the art within your art concept is why we have all these different expressions, which is not a bad thing, but it's not what he did. And if you try to replicate that without having the original source DNA, how do we do that? So that's my point, is we still need to have that core. So Remy taught it 2 ways: a standalone program, which is what he did in the Philippines, and then the art within your art to get the art out there and then get people to start going. And like I said, at the end, he was trying to standardize things a lot more than at the beginning. He would still take the people, anyone who wanted to cross-train, they paid the bills. But the people who got serious about it, he started refining, trying to make them Filipino martial artists. Most modern Arnis people are not Filipino martial artists.
Yep.
Okay.
My dad's not. He's a Remy student.
I'm sorry?
My dad always says to everybody, he's not a student of Filipino martial arts. He's a student of Professor Precis because he didn't go anywhere else besides Remy. Until even still it doesn't.
Let's see here.
Here's a question.
Okay.
All right, what we got here from GM Joe? But the question, can you perform minor Arnis as a separate entity if you do a blended art?
So, and that's it. I mean, the problem here is this: what Remy would show you how to blend it with what your base was.
Yeah.
So people would ask me, Tim, what would you do when you're doing this technique? How would you do it? I do it this way. Well, why don't you? Well, he taught us to do it this way, right? Because he's trying to blend it in to what you're doing. So he's plugging an adapter in there.
No.
But you don't need an adapter if you're doing it by itself.
Yeah.
You know.
But I think the issue still lies with Remy creating an art from a blend. So like if he's teaching a karate guy, he took karate. So is it then no longer modern Arnis, or is it just karate with modern Arnis?
Say that one more time.
Because, and forgive me if my history is incorrect, in the Pink Book and the book that was written by Magaral, the one that you're in, Datu Tim, which I need you to sign, by the way, as soon as I see you next. He did karate, he did judo, he did jujitsu, right? He did those in the Philippines to some degree.
He did karate.
Okay, but okay.
I know that for he was like a 5th or 6th dan in Shotokan.
Okay, then let's go with that one. Then that's an easier example for me to make the connections.
Yeah.
If he did Shotokan, which I'm sure he applied into creating a modern Arnis, is that a fair statement to say?
Oh, I was just reaching one. Say it one more time.
He used his Shotokan background to help create modern Arnis.
So, what he would do is use his Shotokan background to connect the dots to karate.
Oh, no. I mean when he created the modern Arnis.
So, so when I look at the art, as per what I learned, the only thing that he was really using at that time was the stance work when he created the stick forms.
Okay.
Just the stick forms. But the thing here's the thing. Remy made the synthesis. He made the blend. Okay. So I'm not saying that there's other elements that doesn't go with the thing, but the thing is he had a product that he blended with other systems.
Yes.
Okay. We need to have that core to work from. You know, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't change that. It doesn't matter what he put into it because he put it in there.
I have a question for all of you.
Okay.
I keep hearing about the core, and I'm not dismissing it. I think it's fundamentally important. Noah, do you have an interest in getting core modern Arnis? If you had the opportunity, do you like, in other words, like, do you have an interest of getting like core modern Arnis as a standalone art?
If I could, yeah. My instructor always encouraged me to learn as much as I can. He always told me that if you were not willing to learn as much as you can, especially modern stuff, you won't be a complete martial artist. He told me if I never learned how to handle a gun or gun retention with the firearm, then I'm not a complete martial artist because I wouldn't be able to keep up with today's weaponry standards. So if I had the chance to, I would learn it, and then I would take it and, add it to what I know.
Okay, that's my next question. If, let's just say you reached out to Dr. Tim and you're getting from wherever his starting point is to Z, and you're getting just modern Arnis as a standalone program, would you teach it as a standalone program, or would you go and blend it with your existing stuff?
That's interesting.
The reason I'm asking, if we want, again, I don't think there's not a right or wrong answer. It'd help for me to tell you what to do, but I'm just curious. Like, here are your options. You could teach as a standalone, you can blend it, or you could teach the blend and the standalone. Like, what do you think you would do?
I would probably teach the blend and the standalone, because I've had people come to me before that just wanted to learn a specific thing from this art, or just a specific art and nothing else. And I'm not going to tell them no, especially if they're paying me.
Yeah, if they want to standalone. No,
if they want just the core, then I would give them just the core. But if I'm going based off of like a curriculum, like here's my fancy thing, then I would teach it as a curriculum.
Okay. My question is, Datu, how many people just teach the core? I don't think there's a lot. Is there a lot? Well, I should say, because I don't know.
So,
are there a lot of people teach just the core?
No, well, now let me talk about this too. I'm not against innovation, because that's not what I'm saying. I don't look at this as being the way Remy did, and that's all there is to it. I use the formulas that he created. That's what I'm talking about. The core concepts are all the same. The thing here is when you learned it, if you picked it up, the problem is that so many people have done it as a blended program. People don't. The waters are muddied.
They don't know what the core looks like.
That's there you go.
So okay, so this is what I mean.
So Eric, we talked about Eric Alexander, which was Chad or Ty Botting's instructor.
Yeah, was
in the New England area. He brought me out. He could have brought Sifu Lowry. He could have brought, oh my God, the guy who hosted the camps, Richard Roy. He could have had the Claps. He could have had all these people that were the top guys at the time. He brought me out in 91. I'm like, why do you have me? You've got all these guys here. Because they're blending it with as much as their primary art as possible. I need to know what the art's supposed to look like. So then if I choose to blend it with other things, I have that choice, but I want to know what Remy was doing. And you do that. So, and I evolved. I mean, I changed the delivery system of the angles of attack because the nice thing about modern Arnis, it is not tied. The angles of attack, the order, the delivery system is not tied to anything in what we do. Where if I change the order, it changes the system. Where Balintwalk, it's very important because it's about the basic fundamentals, the abecedario, the seguidus, the quintata, the creatus, and stuff of that nature.
I guess what I'm alluding to is when I look at the future tense of modern Arnis, the big problem I'm seeing, and just by virtue of what I'm hearing from you guys and all that, is like, okay, we're gonna progress. We want to, keep Remy's legacy going. We got produce students, all that. But I guess what I'm saying, but as far as the production of students, it sounds like the most students are going to be not coming from the core. They're going to be coming from like what was put in there based on what their instructor's background was previous to when Remy came into their school. So now we have this. So so if we're going forward, are we going forward in that lane? Or are we also going to go forward where, okay, there's some guys who just teach it separately. Okay, well, what is the separate? Does that make sense? What kind of what I'm alluding to?
Ask a question with that.
Yeah.
Because I just thought of this and I'm curious what the answer would be. If we're teaching Remy's art, which is fine. Noah's gone.
Noah!
He didn't want
to
send out a search party. Maybe if he did it on his phone, it may have died.
That's also true. We have been going for.
That is true.
Come here.
That is true.
I guess we could do a part 2.
But as you're about to say before we had technical difficulty.
The question is this: if we're going to teach Remy's art,
yes,
what time are we basing that off of? And I'll use my example.
That's another good question.
Example is this, and I've heard this from people. Remy, and this is when you got to work with people, or what they were able to do is different on when you found them. Like I work with the Orlando Eskrima Club, they're Serrata based, and one of their direct lineages is Jimmy Tacosa, who did Serrata with Angel at a different age than when the other guys did, or so forth. So at what point are we defining Remy's art as the one that we should be, or the core art? Because I know for another fact that my dad told me, Remy in the 80s, or no, better way to say it, Remy before he met Wally J, the locks still hurt, but he said they hurt more after he applied small circle jiu-jitsu into it, which now you're adding another blend into the art. So when you're teaching this core art, are you teaching it based off what time? Are you teaching it when it came to the Americas? Are you teaching it from when he had it in the 80s? Are you teaching it from when he had it in the 90s? Or are you teaching it at the 2000s towards the end of his life when I know there was an influence of small circle jiu-jitsu and Rikyu Kempo? So, I mean, like, we have to determine if we're going to go off the core, which I think is not a bad idea.
Well, I mean, you would go off the most current. I mean, you wouldn't go, like, if you're going to go Inisano Jeet Kune Do, you wouldn't go back and do it in the 90s. You do it now.
Absolutely.
So first of all, I mean, that's
absolutely right. You
so listen, like I've said this on other shows. The problem in the Philippines, they can show you what the art was before he came over here.
Absolutely.
But they don't know Remy's art the way he evolved it to. They missed 26 years of evolution.
But
so,
but then
at the end,
do you teach your students the principles of small circle jiu-jitsu? Because I know that was an added part to it.
So I spent a lot of time with Wally. I don't have any certification underneath him.
You told me tons of stories, so I'm just curious. Like, when did that whole addition come into the mix?
Well, that changes the nuances, but it doesn't change the technique.
Okay.
It's still the same technique.
Jack,
and I've definitely added the small circle influence on my disarms and stuff like that, but still the technique is still the technique.
Okay. I was just curious what your thoughts would be
So
on
it
that.
sounds like, again, it sounds like there's some instructors. I think, when I'm thinking about
I would also ask Chad who's black belt tested because the problem here is, so here's the problem with modern. Remy taught in a rotating curriculum. I've had some people, I mean, the chairman of the board was like, Tim, what do you think about this? There's a push to test what was taught at the camp. I'm like, sometimes Remy doesn't teach the forms at the camp. Does that mean the forms go away? Okay. Sometimes he doesn't teach trapping hands. And I had someone like, well, yeah, he doesn't teach trapping hands anymore. I go, because you should know it. And the problem here is he's teaching the current material, the current updates. It didn't mean that the rest of the material disappeared. I mean, okay, so trapping hands, block check counter, double Sinwali, it's all the same technique. Yeah. To say one element is no longer there doesn't mean, I mean, he's not. You take any system, do we have to really, whatever the 12 angles of attack are, do we have to teach the 12 angles of attack in every camp? But at the end of the day, we're going down a different thing. I
guess, I kind of digress, I suppose, but what I was seeing, when I was listening to all you guys talk, all of you, it just clicked upon me like, wait a minute, man, we got a standalone program, and then we got these multitude of blends pending what the original instructor's background, whether it was Kempo, whether it was Judo, whether it was Taekwondo, and then, depending on what they incorporated or what decade they saw Remy and trained with them and what resonated with them. Like, and going forward, man, I see, like, there could be, how many variations depending on like who you're under and what decade and all that. So I guess
it almost goes the JKD route where you had Jerry Petit doing one era versus other people doing another era.
I'll throw this out there because I just thought of this because as I looked at my history more with my dad. My dad did not do. I mean, he's never taught me anything kung fu in my entire life. Never have. Okay. Never. Yeah. He did not want to. When he tells me this all the time. When he met Remy, he put down the sash essentially. Like he focused on modern Arnis. That was his focus. That's why he dropped out of college. He went to follow Professor.
Constant Craving. I love that song. Renee.
So technically speaking, I got a core modern Arnis lineage because my father only did modern Arnis at that point. Was there some minor subtle influences of his kung fu footwork? Maybe, but he would never call it that. He'd just say, "Oh, I triangle steps and just did it. I angled more." Yeah, okay. But then my core modern Arnis lineage from my father came from the time that was under the 80s, 90s, 2000s time frame. So I mean, does that core modern Arnis? Is that better question, Dr. Tim, in your opinion? And feel free to be honest with me. I'm not going to be offended. I still respect you, sir. Is that a core lineage because he didn't do any other art? He did not teach a blend. His students, while they come from other backgrounds, when he's teaching modern Arnis, he's teaching them modern Arnis.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't see much of your father, so I really can't.
Fair,
comment. And where he was at, he could have easily been a master of tappy. I think we've talked about that. And if it wasn't for that little snafu, he probably would have been. He was a third at the time that Remy passed on. Mm-hmm. I saw him at the 2 Atlanta camps, and he hosted the Orlando camp, and I saw him at the Texas camp. So there's 4 events I was at. I didn't spend a lot of time with him. Yeah. Because at least in Orlando, he was busy being the host. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see him do a lot of teaching, so it's kind of hard to see what was what. Here's the thing. Getting back to the main thing, the blend, the core is whatever Remy was teaching. It's his synthesis. But the thing here is, it doesn't matter where he pulled from because it's his blend.
Right.
If we need to understand those core elements, like police, trapping hands, the Cruzada flow drill, the Duma drill. Like when we talk about right Rukyu Kempo, that really just came into form applications. He didn't do much other than that when he taught us as students. There's no question that he fine-tuned his locks and controls, but he was doing locks and controls before he did Wally J. But that's a nuance thing. That's not changing the art. That's just a splash of flavor. Just as much as Wally J put Arnis in what he was doing.
Absolutely.
So the problem is with when Remy taught this rotating curriculum, if you came in on one part of the circle, you may have missed a whole bunch of other things. And that's the problem with a lot of the people that learned the art within your art. Besides, like Dean said, you see a whole bunch of different blends because they're not doing it from their core. They're doing it from their core, not Remy's core.
I got a suggestion. I'm going to run by all three of you. All three of you can answer. If this would help be a solution, a potential solution, I should say.
Part two, yes.
In establishing what Datu says, some core key element, regardless of decade, there was some overlap of just core stuff. They might have evolved, but they were still core ingredients that he instilled, whether standalone or the blend and all that. What if those were identified and they were documented and there was some agreement by the heads, whoever those designated heads are, but there was some agreement to them, they were formatted, documented, and they're going forward. That's my suggestion, where that could be a reference, if you will. What say you, Noah?
I mean, if we had the ability to do that, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
I'm saying get the heads in there. Get maybe Master Chiu, Datu, whoever else. I know some might not get in the same room together. Maybe you have to have 2 rooms. I don't know. But if there's something to come out of like those meetings where the core essentials were identified and agreed upon, I think that would, as far as going forward, like, well, what's going forward? Is it standalone or is it these blends? And nothing gets wrong with the blends. I'm not trying to knock the blends. I just see this problem of like, well, what are you carrying forward? Who's carrying what forward?
And that's it. It's the intent. Like I said, while Remy was alive, I was doing 20 plus seminars a year because people wanted to get more dialed in. Because unfortunately, it was all blended, and it just. Listen, unfortunately, actually, you know what? And that's unimportant. To be honest with you, the topic is what do we need to do to keep the art going? So we don't even have to agree on what the curriculum is, for that matter. What the core, I mean, I can tell you what the core is. It's real simple. Angles of attack, block check counter, the whole family of the double Sinwali system, which is actually all the same thing as block check counter. You do your police, you do your 2 variations of Tappy Tappy. There's the Sinwali-based version, and then there's the Balintwak Sagitas version of that. You have your lock flows, your disarming. Those are pretty much your core elements, and you do that, and you got most of what Remy did.
Okay. My needs to be the static picture, but evolving landscape. The fundamentals will always be the fundamentals, but they grow. Yeah, as the decades went.
The thing here is the reason why it's modern is that Remy had these core elements and he adapted them to different scenarios.
Okay. Yeah.
We have the same core, but we have our own. And that's what I said before. There's a difference between system, the methodology, and expression, which is style. Martial style is your swagger. Martial system is the ABCs, the building blocks.
Okay. I just think if those were, again, they don't have to be, I'm not, obviously everybody should have some input in that, particularly the ones who actually trained with Remy. But I think if that happened, I think that would just help with, in other words, and the reason why I think it would be important and help is that if you get young cats like Noah and let's say somebody else, and at least if they had this structure and this outline of the core stuff, I mean, they could give it to up and coming students. But the way now, I hate to use this and I don't want this to come across right. I just can't think of a better word right now. But it kind of just seems like this, just nothing lacking clarity. And I hate to say it, but like somewhat of a mess. And that might not be the appropriate word. I just can't think of anything right now. But going forward, I think it would be easier to go forward if you guys had something agreeable, generally speaking, agreeable from the people that actually touch hands with Remy.
Actually, so here's what I was going to put out to these two guys, because once again, we'll probably argue and have different interpretations of things and not agree to disagree on things like this. What needs to happen is inside of these own training groups, organizations, fill in the blank. Do you have a methodology to produce people to teach, aka black belts? We'll just use that term because it's an easy term to do. And as far as this, I was going to say something about this, Joe. Here's the thing: the core was still the core, but how he applied the core evolved. He still had the base fundamental of that core, but then he had a greater applications later, different uses for it.
Joe.
So, but the core, I mean, because
good question here by Joe Bates.
Yeah, Joe Bates. You see, so Remy would take a technique and how we would apply it today might be a little different, but it was still that same formula and applied it to a different scenario. Now, there's a difference between scenario training. I mean, you still take all your basic martial arts and adapt to the scenario. It doesn't change the formula. It's just the scenario changes the values.
Yeah.
So the thing here is, can you produce black belts? Produce, not promote.
But here's the thing, though, Datu, and here's my question to you. And I agree, you got to produce as opposed to
each group needs to have their own curriculum, because we're not going to agree. See, I actually try to push a Kukiwan type platform for modern Arnis, where we all had a minimum standard from organization to organization.
That's what I mean. Just like something that's someone. I'm not saying you guys need to agree to every T crossed and I dotted, but at least something generalized where folks can kind of be happy with it. Okay, hey, I might did this, I might start that, but overall, I'm content with it. It's going to help the younger generation go forward. And that I'm just looking at that, something codified for younger people going forward.
Go ahead, Chris.
I had a long time ago when I was first starting to teach modern Arnis, and my dad unfortunately gave me a hindrance, not teaching me with a quote unquote curriculum. He taught me how Remy taught him, which was, hey, I want to try something today. Let's see what works. Okay, boom. Yeah. I asked him, well, what should I teach people? And what should my starting point be if I wanted to produce black belts, as Dr. Tim is referencing here? Yeah. He said the three most important things that professor told him that anyone should learn. And these were professor's words to my dad. So yeah, it's a story it's anecdotal evidence, but I'm going to take my dad at face value because he's my dad, and he'd have no reason to lie to me about this. He said there were three things that you should know as a modern Arnis practitioner: 6-count drill, trapping hands, and single Sinawali.
All right, let's check this out. This is what Ty's got. Let's see if he matches what I think some of the things parallel to what you mentioned.
But that was just three things that could be expanded on infinitely.
Okay.
Single Sinawali. Datu Tim probably knows 50,000 variations of single Sinawali or variations in single Sinawali.
But here, let's check out what Ty wrote, and let's just see if it kind of coincides with what you're saying, Chris, which I think it.
Some of it does. Right,
so we got the standard disarm, Sinawali standard disarms, maybe the counters, angles of attack, block, check, counter, trapping hands, Sinawali boxing, tappy, right and left, striking styles, anyos, and abiniko, corto, and more, and palis. Okay, anyos being the forms. Am I correct?
Yeah. The sayals, the anyos.
Okay.
I mean, right there. I mean that what he listed, and he left out the locks and control. I mean, he says and still more and more still. So okay. I mean, right there. So I'll tell you what I mean by standalone, because this is going to probably put it in a better proportion here. Most people who teach the art, most people who teach Filipino martial arts, don't teach open hand combatives, and it's in the art. They rely on doing open hand combatives elsewhere. So they'll do kickboxing, or they'll do Wing Chun, or they'll do
Thai boxing. Okay, fair enough.
That's the problem. And modern Arnis has it all. I mean, the Sinawali boxing, there's the Sinawali application, and then the Sinawali. Will you be quiet? Oh my God. I'm henpecked by my damn dog.
My dog won't be quiet. No, anything to say on this?
I like what you said about agreements. I think another big killer of preserving these arts is that nobody can agree with each other half the time. I mean, I thought Bikini Tertius politics were bad. You know,
they are, but you got
Arnis is I think, no offense to the art, but it's up there as well.
It's
and
definitely
up there. Of course, before us, Noah, I'm hearing.
It's definitely up there. Bikini's out in your face. You know, on our knees, I see more kind of passive aggressive. You know what I mean?
Because we're 20 years removed.
Okay. So everything must translate to hands. I think that's
agreed, Guru Chad.
Fair. I
that
agree
is
with that.
the form of modern Arnis, my dad would say, is the empty hand version.
But here's the thing. Somebody wrote something. I'm just trying to find it.
People are writing a lot of things.
Yeah. I tell you, this episode is going a lot better than I knew it was going to go well, but
I knew it's going to be packed.
Okay. So do you guys? Here, I want you guys' opinions on this, and I know it might be. I'm not saying it would be easy, but I think it's absolutely worth the attempt, at least, to get some of the senior folks, whether they meet in a room or they can pass back and forth what they feel there. But I think you would be doing the second, where, as Jackie put it, I think you would be doing such an awesome service for the future if you guys could somehow kind of compile what Ty listed, what some of you guys spoke on as far as essentials and core. Do you think that's something that's feasible that could happen?
We should ask a question first. Is that what Professor would have wanted?
Okay, that's fair. Okay.
No. I mean, what do you mean by it? I mean,
I don't know the man, so I wouldn't know his wishes.
Listen, he wanted. We were in the process of doing a written curriculum.
Okay.
I mean, or more importantly, using my written curriculum because I had a full-time school that was working.
Okay.
I produced 30 black belts for him, from Lacan and Dayang and then first, second, and third degree black belts. Okay, the masters of Tappy Tappy, there's 7 of them. As a whole, they produced 10 black belts for Remy before he passed.
Before he passed. Okay.
Before the whole group of them collectively produced 10 black belts. Okay. I had this down because the school I came from had it down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they were quality black belts. They weren't Remy at the time. Remy charged an extra $30 for testing, no matter what belt it was.
Okay.
At the end, it changed.
In addition to the camp fee?
Yeah, so you pay $300 for the camp, which it would be like $300 to $350 to go to MSU. Now here's the other thing too. Your father never went to MSU. MSU was the elite camp. Everybody went to that camp. What?
I'm sorry, Datu. Just for those who might know, where was that held?
Michigan State University. The Michigan camp was the longest running camp, and it was the most advanced camp.
I thought my dad went to one of those.
No, he went to Texas. I knew people down in your area that were trying to push him to go to Michigan. He never went to Michigan while Remy was alive or while he was teaching. That was the elite camp. I met him. I met him at the 2 Atlanta camps, his Orlando and Texas, the one Texas.
Okay.
Your father didn't go to many of the camps. But Remy was going down there. So it was another story. You know, I mean, a lot of people didn't go to many of the camps. The mods started becoming camp. The what would become the Masters of Tappy Tappy started becoming camp rats. Most of them went around, but not a lot. Let me see here. What's this?
They've been done, but it doesn't seem like it's.
Dean, I hate to be the guy to do this, but I want to probably have to go soon because it's getting late and I have to be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, no. We definitely. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't want to leave.
Okay. No. You know what? I'm smelling a part 2.
We could do that. I listen. Before Chris goes, I'm gonna say my piece or ask the question.
Yes.
In my opinion, for people to continue the art, to take it on to the next generation.
That's a good question.
So there's we have to do something because if something's not done, at least in North America, it's going to disappear in the next generation. In 20 years from now, modern Arnis may become absorbed by multiple systems of martial arts.
Yeah.
Dean and I have talked about this about many Filipino martial arts.
Yeah, I think a part 2, Chad. Yeah.
Okay.
Chad, we might be, and Chad, we're going to get you on here too.
Do you think, can you teach the art to somebody to be self-sufficient for the basic needs of what a martial arts school generally offers?
Mhm.
Self-defense, punching, kicking, not making it like a fencing school or a kendo school, which they are no such things. They usually, there's very few of those out there. They are really supplement something else, or they're out of a rec center. Can your people do the art by itself? Because I mean, that was the problem with, I think that's the reason why modern took such a nosedive after Remy died, because there were not committed programs, because everyone else did is they never took their FMA training wheels off. They're part-timers. We need to produce people that can do martial arts. First of all, we got to get the F out. We're not Filipino martial artists. We're martial artists. And we can't sit there and say, well, we're Filipino martial artists. We can't have these things. Because we're handicapping ourselves about that all the time. And I'm not saying don't say we do Filipino martial arts. What I'm saying is, on multiple interviews, so say, well, we're Filipino martial arts. Of course they're not full-time schools. Why not? Can a system be taught all by itself and give the needs to people where they don't have to go elsewhere? Now, I'm not saying specialty skills like ground grappling and stuff like that. What I'm saying is the basic needs of people who will go to martial arts schools.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're definitely doing a part 2, because there's stuff as far as there's a few stuff in there, and I think it's just a fascinating conversation. Anyhow, so
maybe we should get Ty on this.
I have one final question that'll be an interesting one to discuss later, I'm sure.
Sure.
What is the better way to preserve, not necessarily, because like you said, modern Arnis will die in 20 years, potentially. Great potential to pass away in 20 years.
Has the potential.
Has the potential. So what is better for us to do? Be brick and mortar schooling, as you are, Dr. Tim, and very successful at it, I might add. Or do we do a professor's way of seminar circuits? Not saying you can't do both, because obviously, Dr. Tim, you can. But notice how Professor didn't have a home dojo. He had seminars everywhere. And I look at another example. I look at another person I'm very close with is Tuhan Ray Dinaldo of FCS Kali. He doesn't have a home dojo, but he has students all over the planet, and he has upwards to 45 to 50 seminars a year all across the planet. He doesn't have a home dojo, but the name is getting out there. So are we trying to, what is the better way to do it? Do we do it, first off, are we trying to preserve the name of modern Arnis? Or are we trying to produce or preserve the art of it or the style of it or what have you? So I'm just curious, and I'm going to do some more thinking. I don't have the answer. So
the seminar, I mean, Remy was the ambassador to send the interest to his black belts. Unfortunately, his black belts didn't do the job. I had an apprenticeship program that a bunch of schools would come and train with me. Like I said, I was doing the seminars as well, and people would come to my apprentice weekends to see how I taught the art as a standalone with a written curriculum and everything. Just because Remy was out there, I mean, and if you look at the heads of these Japanese styles, there is a home dojo somewhere, and then they send instructors out to teach seminars to tune people up and stuff of that nature.
Yeah. So dojo, was it in your dojo? Was Remy's home dojo yours inevitably at the end?
Remy didn't have a home dojo because he didn't have that after he moved to the States.
Gotcha. Definitely documented the area.
You know, the thing here is, though, that's an element that he didn't have. Like Ernesto, okay, Remy was the master doing seminars. Ernesto was the master of having an FMA organization. They had passports, they had a curriculum, they had all this stuff that he had better. Mm-hmm. Okay. Modern Arnis as a whole, Remy was trying to win them over, but it was a soft sell augmenting their primary art with Filipino concepts. Yeah. In Comitan, you became a Filipino martial artist, but Remy wasn't trying to produce as a whole. He was trying to win people over, do the soft sell, and hope for more and more people to stand and do it as a standalone system. Rocky Paswick, John Bryant, myself are three that did that. You look at Michael Bates in Philadelphia and Michael Donovan up in London, Ontario. They had 50-50 schools where it was half FMA, half modern and half Kempo and Raikyuu Kempo.
I know
upwards to 40 seminars a year at one point and hadn't have a home dojo. So I'm just trying to find what is the best way to do it.
See, the thing here is if you don't. So Ray stops teaching. He's the driving force. I don't think what he has is sustainable after he stops teaching. I don't think his students have, because once again, because I've got refugees from that, and they're the same thing they're saying. None of them have their own location. They're out of someone else's gym. And if we should have learned anything from COVID, if we are left to the whims of someone else, what happens when when the gym shuts down, or you're teaching out of a rec center and they won't let you in anymore for whatever reason?
Yeah.
Online.
They sell it and they change
Online.
hours and yeah. All right, hey, let's do a part 2 because I know Chris has got to get here. I want to thank Noah. I appreciate you coming on. We're definitely doing a part 2.
Anytime you want me back on, just let me know.
All right, absolutely. All right, guys.
I'm gonna do one plug real quick, Dean. I'm gonna be releasing that episode of Carpool Kali with you announcing season 2.
Oh yeah, do that. That's right. I forgot about that. That's right.
Season 2 Carpool Kali with Dean Franco.
There we go. Let me know.
Is that a YouTube thing?
Yep, I'm gonna put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, when it comes out, send that to me because I'll check that out.
Will do, sir.
All right, guys. Hey, this is phenomenal. The comments speak for itself. So yeah, let me just get set here past this weekend, and I could look at when we're doing part 2. All right. Appreciate you guys. All right, you guys take care.
Have a good night, everybody. Later, Datu. Later.
All right, I gotta address a few comments here. Okay, Kurt, we definitely did an episode on business. Matter of fact, Datu was on that. How to get a school, LS, and profitable. And also, if you have personal questions on that, Kurt, I would definitely message Tim. But yeah, we definitely cover episodes. Unfortunately, I don't recall the number of them, but we definitely, it's something we've done on that and how to do it successfully in there. What else? Let me just see what I'm missing. But a big thank you to everybody that chimed in and commented. This is a good one. Definitely a part 2. Pretty sure that yes, Chad. The art has to grow as larger than the man. Yeah, that's for sure, Chad. Okay. There we go. That was a good commentary from Guru Time. Okay. Good. Great topics, Revelatory. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, not just modern East. Absolutely. What else did I miss here? Good night, Blue. Thank you for joining. Awesome, good. Sorry for typing so much. No, I'm glad you were commenting your time. Thank you all. Awesome. All right, guys. Yeah, I'll definitely let everybody know. But yeah, definitely a needed part 2 to this. I didn't think I didn't know it would be this long, or it would go this long. So absolute. All right. Thanks for jumping. Oh, tomorrow night, Guru Maynard, PTK, is going to be on at 9:00 Eastern time. And if you saw his test run, pretty interesting. So if you're not doing anything, check that out. That's going to be again tomorrow night, 9:00. All right, yeah. Peace to you, Chad. Thanks for chiming in too. Yeah, you should be jumping on the next one, Chad, if you have an interest. All right, folks. I will see you next time tomorrow night.